The battle for Hollow Creek Ranch. The sun was barely up when the sound of sirens tore through the quiet of Hollow Creek Ranch. I stood at the edge of my porch, coffee mug frozen in my hand, watching 4 sheriff's deputies pull up to my front gate. Their squad cars lined the dirt road, lights flashing like a 4th of July parade. One deputy, a burly man with a megaphone, bellowed, "Step away from the gate, Mr. Harlan. This is an official order." My name's Tom Harlan, a 58-year-old retired mechanic who's called this 100-acre spread in Central Texas home for nearly 2 decades. I'm not a troublemaker. I fix fences, tend to my horses, and help the local 4-H kids learn about livestock every spring. But that morning, I was staring down a fight I never asked for. All because I'd put up a steel gate across a road that didn't exist 3 months ago, a road the local homeowners association, HOA, which I wasn't even part of, had carved right through my pasture without so much as a phone call. The HOA claimed I was blocking public access. Public? That road split my land in half, scared my cattle, and wasn't on any county map. Last night, someone had rammed a truck through my old gate, bending it like a tin can. So I'd reinforced it, added a padlock, and thought that was the end of it. Now, here were the deputies, acting like I was the criminal. I set my mug down and walked toward the gate, hands raised to show I wasn't looking for trouble. "This is private land," I called out, my voice steady despite the knot in my gut. "That road's illegal." The megaphone deputy didn't flinch. "Unlock the gate, sir, or we'll force entry." That's when I said the words that changed everything. Not only am I not unlocking it, every member of that HOA is banned from stepping foot on my property. The deputies exchanged glances, unsure what to make of me. Before they could respond, my wife, Clara, stepped out of the house, clutching a thick manila folder. Her graying hair was pulled back, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. "I suggest you boys look at these property lines before you do something you'll regret," she said, her voice calm but cutting. The deputies hesitated, and I knew we'd just bought ourselves some time. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to the beginning. I bought Hollow Creek Ranch after a back injury forced me out of my mechanic shop in Austin. Clara, a part-time paralegal with a knack for digging up legal dirt, wanted a quiet life as much as I did. We raised horses, grew hay, and kept to ourselves. The land wasn't just a home. It was a legacy passed down from my father, who'd worked it with his own hands. We paid our taxes, donated to the local food bank, and never bothered anyone. Trouble started when a fancy new subdivision, Crestwood Hills, popped up on the 400 acres next to us. It was all curved driveways, solar-powered street lamps, and joggers in neon sneakers. The Crestwood HOA ran the place like a private country club, and I didn't care until the day I saw bulldozers on my land. I was checking fences when I spotted them, tearing up my lower pasture. 3 guys in orange vests were working a grader, and a man in a polo shirt stood nearby, clipboard in hand. His name was Leonard Price, a Crestwood HOA board member with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I help you?" he asked, like I was the one out of place. I pointed at the half-paved strip cutting through my grass. "What's that doing on my land?" Leonard smirked. "This? It's an access road. Connects our east gate to Highway 12. Better for school buses, ambulances, community stuff. You should be happy. It'll raise your property value." I laughed, thinking it was a bad joke. "You didn't ask me. You didn't get a permit. This is my land." He shrugged. "Eminent domain, Tom. Look it up." That was the first lie. Clara and I looked it up, all right. We pulled deeds, surveys, and GPS maps from the county. There was no easement, no approval, nothing. The road was a brazen land grab. So, I did what any man would do. I put up a gate, bolted it shut, and posted signs, "Private property. No trespassing." That night, someone smashed through it with a truck, snapping my fence and spooking my horses. One of my mares, Daisy, limped for days. The next morning, a note was taped to my mailbox. "Enjoy your protest. Our lawyers are coming." 2 days later, they did. The HOA slapped me with a lawsuit, claiming I was violating their right-of-way. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at old photos of my dad on this ranch, wondering how it had come to this. Clara, ever the fighter, said, "We're not backing down, Tom." She was right. We hired a surveyor, a real estate attorney from San Antonio, and started documenting everything: dates, photos, license plates, videos of every car that crossed my land. The HOA didn't stop. Leonard and his cronies held emergency meetings, printed flyers calling me a public menace, and got the local paper to run a hit piece. Rancher blocks vital community route. Clara wanted to fire back in the press, but I told her to hold off. Let the facts talk, I said. But when the deputies showed up that morning, I knew facts alone wouldn't be enough. As Clara handed her folder to the lead deputy, a black SUV roared up behind the squad cars. Leonard, standing smugly behind the deputies, went pale. The SUV's door opened, and out stepped Clara, flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals and Judge Margaret Holt, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for cutting through lies like a hot knife through butter. The yard went dead silent. "Who's in charge here?" Judge Holt asked, her voice like gravel. A deputy started to answer, but she cut him off. "No, you're not. I am. This land is private, this road is illegal, and the HOA is violating state law." She held up a cease and desist order, signed that morning. Leonard opened his mouth, but Holt shut him down. "One more word, and you're in contempt. Am I clear?" The deputies backed off, mumbling about conflicting information. Holt turned to me. "Mr. Harlan, anything to add?" I stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am. I've got video of HOA members crossing my gate after I posted warnings, and I've ID'd Leonard and 2 others vandalizing my property, including a hit and run that hurt my mare." Clara handed a USB drive to a marshal. Leonard tried to slip away, but a marshal barked, "Stay put." The air crackled with tension, and I knew this was just the start. The HOA wasn't just after a road, they wanted my whole ranch. And they were about to learn I wasn't going anywhere. The marshals escorted Leonard Price to a squad car, his face a mix of panic and disbelief. Judge Holt's words still hung in the air: contempt of court, immediate arrest. The deputies, caught off guard by the cease and desist order, shuffled back to their cars, one muttering about paperwork errors. Clara and I stood by the gate, her hand gripping mine so tight I could feel her pulse. We'd won this round, but the fight was far from over. That night, Clara spread out the HOA's development plan on our kitchen table. It wasn't just a road. The map showed a community park, a retention pond, and future expansion zones labeled Phase 2, Phase 3, and a clubhouse all on my land. My barn, my workshop, even the old pecan tree where we'd scattered my father's ashes were marked for bulldozers. "They're not stopping at a shortcut," Clara said, her voice low. "They want it all." I stared at the map, my stomach churning. How'd they even file this? Clara pointed to a stamp in the corner. "Submitted to county planning, Crestwood HOA." They'd labeled my ranch as vacant reserve space. Vacant. I'd been paying taxes on this land for 20 years. My horses grazed here. My father's sweat was in every fence post. And they called it vacant. Clara had already dug deeper. She found out Leonard wasn't just an HOA board member. He was a silent partner in Hilltop Ventures, the real estate firm behind Crestwood Hills. The road was just the first step in a bigger scheme to swallow my ranch and flip it for millions. "This is fraud," Clara said. "Maybe criminal." The next morning, I woke to find my fences cut in 4 places. Barbed wire lay in coils, snipped clean with bolt cutters. My horses had wandered dangerously close to the HOA's road before a neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, corralled them. My security cameras? Spray-painted black. A no trespassing sign was ripped in half, with "This ain't over" scrawled on the back in marker. Clara was livid. "I'm calling the sheriff and the news," she said, storming inside. "Hold on," I said. I had a different plan. While Clara built our legal case, I'd been working on something else, a community case. I'd collected statements from neighbors who'd seen HOA trucks on my land, photos of their vehicles, and even video clips from other Texas ranchers who'd dealt with similar land grabs. Best of all, I had a whistleblower construction worker who'd paved the road. He sent me screenshots of texts from Leonard and other HOA members, laughing about taking the old cowboy's land before I'd even notice. An internal memo bragged they'd have the road done before the county could intervene. Clara filed a lawsuit against the Crestwood HOA for trespassing, property damage, and attempted land seizure. We also sent a complaint to the Texas Attorney General's office. But I didn't stop there. I posted our story online Reddit, Facebook, the local news group. Every document, photo, and video went up with a simple headline: "HOA built illegal road through my ranch, sued me for blocking it. Now they want my land." By morning, it had gone viral. Thousands shared it. Ranchers offered to fix my fences. A reporter from Austin called for an interview. I wasn't alone anymore. But the HOA didn't back down. 2 nights later, I caught 3 teenagers sneaking onto my land with gasoline cans, heading for my barn. My cameras, newly replaced, caught them clear as day. I called the sheriff, who nabbed them hiding behind my hay bales. One was Leonard's son, Kyle. I thought that'd be the end of it. But the next day, a thick envelope arrived. Another lawsuit. The HOA accused me of harassment, claiming I was inciting public hatred and endangering children. Clara laughed bitterly. They're throwing everything at us, hoping we'll break. I didn't break. Instead, I doubled down. Our lawyer, Susan Vega, a tough-as-nails litigator from Dallas, was prepping for a hearing to secure a permanent protective easement. It had let me fence off my land, block the road for good, and have trespassers arrested on site. The day before the hearing, Susan called with news. The HOA had tried to alter county records, forging an easement to legitimize their road. They got caught. The district attorney was now sniffing around, and Leonard was facing criminal charges. I should have felt relieved, but that night, a bang echoed from behind the house. I ran outside, Clara right behind me, and froze. My barn, me father's barn, built in 1975, was engulfed in flames. Red tongues licked the night sky, swallowing decades of memories. Call 911. I yelled, my old mechanic instincts kicking in. Clara dialed, her voice cracking as she gave our address. The barn's gone, and the horses, Tom, the horses. I didn't think. I grabbed a wet towel, wrapped it over my face, and charged inside. Smoke stung my eyes, choked my lungs. I could barely see, but I heard the horses screaming in terror. I fumbled with the stall latches, slapping each horse to drive them toward the back gate. Go. Move. Daisy, my oldest mare, was limping, but I got a rope around her and pulled her out just as a beam crashed behind us. We stumbled into the pasture, coughing, alive. Clara ran to me, tears streaking her face. You got them out. You're okay. I couldn't speak. The barn was gone. The fire department arrived too late to save it, though they kept the flames from spreading. The sheriff pulled me aside. We found gasoline. This was arson. Clara went pale. The HOA. The sheriff's jaw tightened. We've got Leonard's kid on record for trespassing. I'm not saying it's them yet, but we're investigating. I didn't sleep that night. The smell of charred clung to everything. But the next morning, we had a hearing with Judge Holt. I stood in court, stood still on my boots, Clara's hand in mine. Leonard was there, looking like a man who'd aged a decade overnight. Before the hearing started, the DA's assistant handed Holt a file. She read it, her face darkening. Mr. Harlan, she said, we have video of 3 individuals, 2 HOA board members and Leonard's son carrying gas cans onto your property last night. The courtroom gasped. Leonard stammered. I didn't know. Holt wasn't having it. Mr. Price, you're under investigation for conspiracy to commit arson and fraudulent land seizure. 2 officers cuffed him. Clara squeezed my hand. The judge granted our protective easement. No HOA member could step on my land. The road was permanently closed. I could build a legal blockade anywhere on my perimeter. We drove home in silence. The barn's ruins smoldered, but my horses were safe. We hauled boulders to block the road, and I welded a new steel gate myself. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a drone photo of my ranch, a red X over our house, and one sentence. You're not safe yet. Clara stared at it, her voice barely a whisper. Someone's watching us, Tom. I nodded, my hands shaking not with fear, but with rage. This wasn't just Leonard. Someone bigger was pulling the strings, and I was going to find out who. The drone photo lay on our kitchen table like a rattlesnake, its red X glaring up at us. Clara's eyes didn't leave it. Tom, this means someone's out there, right now, watching. I nodded, my jaw tight. And they're not done. The sheriff came by within the hour, bagging the photo and envelope as evidence. No prints, he said, frowning. They wore gloves. My guess? Someone tied to the HOA, scared Leonard's about to spill. He was right about Leonard. 2 days earlier, facing felony charges, Leonard had cut a deal. He told investigators about a secret HOA fund money siphoned from emergency repair fees and funneled into bribes, shady contractors, and land buyout schemes. But he swore he wasn't the mastermind. Someone else on the Crestwood board was calling the shots, someone he hadn't named yet. That drone photo? It was proof they wanted us quiet. Clara locked every door that night. We took turns keeping watch, me with my old Winchester rifle, a gift from my dad after I fixed my first tractor at 16. Around 2:30 a.m., the motion lights behind the barn snapped on. I bolted outside, rifle in one hand, flashlight in the other. Above the house, a drone hovered, its red light blinking like an eye. I didn't think twice. I aimed and fired. The drone sparked, spiraled, and crashed into the gravel. Clara ran out. What was that? I held up the wreckage. They were watching. The sheriff took the drone to trace its serial number. The next morning, our lawyer, Susan Vega, called with a bombshell. Tom, the HOA's president, Ellen Carter, just skipped town. Emptied the HOA account $130,000 and vanished. Ellen, the woman who'd brought pecan pies to the Crestwood welcome picnic, preaching about community unity. She wasn't just the HOA's face. She'd hired the contractors who paved the road, signed the forged easement papers, and orchestrated the vote to label my land vacant. Leonard was her pawn, and now that he was talking, she'd bolted. But Ellen wasn't as slick as she thought. Federal investigators tracked her within days. Bank transfers, emails, phone logs all pointed back to her. The DOJ was prepping charges. Meanwhile, Clara and I decided to take the fight public. We rented the local Grange Hall and invited every rancher, homeowner, and retiree in the county who'd been bullied by an HOA. Over 90 people showed up, ranchers like me, fed up with developers, single moms fined for leaving toys in their yards, veterans harassed over flagpoles. We told our story, the illegal road, the forged maps, the barn fire, the drone. The room buzzed with anger, but also hope. By the end, we'd formed the Residents Against HOA Overreach Alliance. We launched a petition to audit every HOA in the county, collecting 1,800 signatures in a week. The story hit local news, then state, then national. HOA horror, rancher fights land grab, became a headline. Suddenly, the HOA's Karen culture wasn't just a mite, was a problem people wanted fixed. But the threats didn't stop. One night, I got a call from Leonard, straight from county jail. His voice was low, broken. Tom, I was wrong. You didn't deserve this. I stayed quiet. Then he dropped a name. Ellen wasn't the only one. The real player's Victor Slade, the developer who sold Crestwood the land. He forged the easement papers. He's dangerous, Tom. If he knows I told you, he'll come for me and you. Victor Slade. The name hit like a punch. I'd met him once, at Crestwood's launch barbecue. He'd swaggered up in a tailored blazer, Rolex gleaming, offering a handshake and a grin. Tom, nice spread you got. Ever get tired of fences, give me a call. I'd brushed him off, but his eyes had lingered on my land like a vulture circling. Now it made sense. Leonard and Ellen were loud, but Victor was the shadow, quiet, connected, and ruthless. I called a buddy, Mike Torres, a retired FBI agent turned private investigator. Mike owed me one after I helped rebuild his shed after a storm. I laid out everything. The road, the fire, the drone, Victor. 3 days later, Mike called back. Slade's not just shady as a crook. Sued 7 times in 4 states for land fraud, zoning violations, and bribery. Paid off officials in Arizona, bulldozed protected land in Oregon, never paid the fines. And get she just filed for a sustainable luxury estate on your land, even after the court ruled against him. Victor thought I'd fold. He was wrong. Clara and I filed a new motion, not just for damages, but for a restraining injunction against Victor Slade himself. Susan Vega marched into court with a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. This man, she told Judge Holt, has committed fraud, violated codes, threatened a landowner, and used stolen HOA funds for an illegal campaign. Victor's lawyer, a slick guy with a $500 haircut, smirked and denied everything. But when Susan dropped Mike's dossier and Leonard signed confession, the smirk vanished. Judge Holt issued an order. Victor was barred from all development in Crestwood, forbidden from contacting me, and his zoning applications were flagged. He stood in court, his face red with fury, and as he passed me, he muttered, "This isn't over." I met his glare. "It is for you." But the HOA wasn't done. A week later, the county emailed us. Crestwood had filed a new petition for emergency public access through my ranch, claiming the road was vital for community safety. Clara was furious. After everything, arson, fraud theory still trying? Susan sighed over the phone. They've got money, Tom. Money buys time. They want to wear you down. That night, I sat in the pasture with Daisy, brushing her mane. She nuzzled my shoulder, her limp nearly gone. I made a decision, no more playing defense. The next morning, I called every news outlet I could find. I gave interviews, posted every document online, and started a GoFundMe. Save Hollow Creek Ranch. Donations poured in $5 from a teacher in Ohio, $500 from a rancher in Montana. People were fed up with bullies in suits. Then, a miracle. State Senator Laura Gaines called. Tom, your story's shaking things up. I'm introducing the Landowner Protection Act to stop HOAs from overreaching and criminalize fake easements. The bill gained steam, fueled by my story. Victor's name was dragged through the mud. His partners bailed, his projects froze. For the first time, I felt the tide turning. But as Clara and I sat on our porch, watching the sunset, a black SUV pulled up to the gate. A man in a gray suit stepped out, holding a white envelope. Mr. Harlan, you've been served. The letter wasn't from the HOA. It was from the Federal Land Bureau, announcing my ranch was in the path of Project 19B, a federal infrastructure corridor. They wanted to negotiate a sale within 30 days. Clara's face went white. The government, Tom? After all this. I crumpled the letter. They're not getting this land. Not now, not ever. The Federal Land Bureau's letter sat on my kitchen counter like a loaded gun. Project 19B Infrastructure Corridor. It read, with my ranch marked as a key acquisition zone. The words voluntary sale didn't fool me. I'd seen this game before. First they ask, then they push, then they take. Clara paced the room, her hands twisting a dish towel. Tom, we just beat the HOA. Now the government? How is this fair? It's not, I said, my voice hard. But they picked the wrong fight. The letter gave us 30 days to discuss terms, but I wasn't about to sit down for tea with bureaucrats who thought they could steamroll my family's legacy. Clara and I stayed up all night, digging into Project 19B. We found scraps online, vague mentions of a high-speed transport corridor cutting through rural Texas. Ranchers in neighboring counties had gotten similar letters, some already pressured into selling. The feds were targeting open land, betting folks like me wouldn't fight back. I called Susan Vega, our lawyer, at dawn. She wasn't shocked. Tom, I've heard rumors about 19B for months. It's a federal push, backed by big contractors. They're starting with rural properties because they think you'll cave. But they haven't filed for eminent domain yet. That's your leverage. Leverage or not, I knew the playbook. A friendly surveyor would show up, then a fence would accidentally get torn down, and before long, bulldozers would roll in. Not on my watch. Clara had an idea. Let's go public hard. Make this bigger than us. I agreed. We set up a press conference on the ranch, right by the scorched remains of the barn. I built a plywood podium myself, and by noon, news vans lined the dirt road. Reporters from Austin, Houston, even a national outlet stood ready, cameras rolling. I stepped up, the federal letter in my hand, and let it rip. My name's Tom Harlan. This ranch has been my family's for 3 generations. For the past year, I've fought an HOA that built an illegal road through my land, sued me, burned my barn, and tried to steal everything I've got. I beat them in court. Now the federal government wants to try the same thing. I held up the letter. They call this a voluntary sale. I call it a land grab. They're coming for my home, and they'll come for yours next unless we stop them. The crowd, neighbors, ranchers, even some Crestwood residents fed up with their own HOA card. Reporters scribbled furiously. I looked into the cameras. We're not just landowners. We're families, workers, Americans. And we don't give up. By evening, Stand With Tom was trending. A petition to protect rural landowners from federal overreach hit 120,000 signatures. Senator Laura Gaines called again, promising to tie her Landowner Protection Act to a federal review of Project 19B. Even a veterans group from Wyoming sent a letter of support. But the feds didn't blink. A week later, a new letter arrived, a notice of intent to survey. That meant federal agents could step onto my land, with or without my permission. Clara was furious. They're ignoring the court order, the arson, everything. I wasn't about to let them waltz in. With Susan's help, we filed for a special agricultural heritage designation, proving my ranch was a working farm with cultural value used for veteran therapy programs, school field trips, and horse rescue. It stalled the survey, but didn't stop it. That's when I called in the big guns. Our Residents Against HOA Overreach Alliance had grown to 15,000 members across 6 states. I sent out a single message, "Come to Hollow Creek Ranch." And they did. Over 2 days, people rolled in ranchers in pickups, teachers in sedans, veterans on motorcycles, even college kids on horseback. By the time the federal survey team arrived, they faced a human wall. 200 people, shoulder to shoulder along my fence line, holding signs that read, "You can't steal roots, and this land is our story." No shouting, no violence, just quiet defiance. The survey team, 3 guys in khakis with clipboards, froze. Their leader mumbled into a radio. Then they piled back into their van and left. The crowd erupted in cheers. Clara hugged me, tears in her eyes. "We did it, Tom." I shook my head. For now. The feds issued a statement about reviewing next steps, but I knew they'd be back. Clara wasn't done. "Let's make this land untouchable," she said one night, her eyes blazing. "How?" I asked. "We turn it into a nonprofit conservancy. Protected forever, no sale, no seizure." It sounded crazy, but she was already on the phone with pro bono attorneys who'd seen our story. We launched a new GoFundMe, Protect Hollow Creek Forever, and donations flooded in $10 from a retiree in Florida, $1,000 from a tech guy in Dallas. With the lawyer's help, we filed papers to create the Hollow Creek Ranch Conservancy. Every acre would be locked down, safe from HOAs, developers, or feds. The process took weeks, sinless forms, county hearings, and late-night calls. But the community kept us going. Neighbors brought casseroles. A local welder helped me rebuild the barn's frame. Even some Crestwood residents, ashamed of their HOA's actions, pitched in. One guy, a retired cop named Dave, apologized. "I didn't know how bad it was, Tom. I'm with you now." As the Conservancy papers neared approval, I got a call from Mike Torres, my PI buddy. "Tom, Victor Slade's in trouble. Feds are looking at him for fraud tied to Project 19B. He was feeding info to the Land Bureau, pushing them to target your ranch to clear the way for his own deals." It clicked. Victor wasn't just after my land, for Crestwood was playing a bigger game, using federal muscle to do his dirty work. Susan filed a new motion, linking Victor to the federal push. Judge Holt issued a subpoena for his financial records. Victor's empire was crumbling, but he wasn't the only one. Ellen Carter was arrested in Nevada, caught trying to board a flight to Mexico. Leonard, still in jail, named more small-time contractors, a corrupt county clerk. The DOJ was building a case that could take down half the region's real estate network. One evening, as Clara and I sat by the rebuilt barn, Daisy grazing nearby, I felt a weight lift. The Conservancy was nearly official. The feds had backed off, at least for now. Senator Gaines's bill was gaining co-sponsors. We'd turned our fight into something bigger, a movement. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a sleek sedan pulled up to the gate. A woman in a sharp blazer stepped out, holding a manila envelope. "Mr. Harlan," she said, "this is a courtesy notice." I tore it open. It was a revised federal proposal offering relocation assistance and a fair market buyout for my ranch. They dropped the survey threat but doubled down on the sale pitch, citing national infrastructure priorities. Clara read it over my shoulder, her voice cold. "They're still coming, Tom. They just changed tactics." I crumpled the paper. Let them try. The federal proposal lay crumpled in my hand, its words relocation assistance, fair market buyout burning like an insult. Clara stood beside me, her face a mix of exhaustion and defiance. "They're not giving up, Tom," she said, her voice steady despite the strain. "They think we'll break." I tossed the paper into the dirt. "They don't know us." Hollow Creek Ranch was more than land. It was my father's calloused hands building the barn, my mother's laughter under the pecan tree, the life Clara and I had carved out against all odds. We'd beaten the Crestwood HOA, exposed Victor Slade, and stopped their illegal road. Now the Federal Land Bureau thought they could waltz in with a checkbook and take it all? Not a chance. We called Susan Vega that night. "This new proposal's a pressure tactic," she said. "They're avoiding eminent domain because they know it'd spark a legal war, especially with your conservancy filing. But they're banking on you getting tired." Tired? I was 58, with a bad back and a barn to rebuild, but I wasn't tired. I was angry. And anger, when you channel it right, is a hell of a fuel. Clara and I doubled down. The Hollow Creek Ranch Conservancy was days from approval, but we needed to make our stand ironclad. We invited the media back, this time for a bigger show. We set up on the ranch's front pasture, with the new barn frame rising behind us like a phoenix. Over 300 people showed up, ranchers, neighbors, alliance members, even strangers who'd seen our story online. News crews from CNN, Fox, and local stations parked along the road. Senator Laura Gaines flew in from Austin, her presence drawing more cameras. I stepped to the microphone, the federal letter in one hand, my father's old hat in the other. "This is my home," I started, my voice carrying over the crowd. "For a year, I fought liars, thieves, and bullies who tried to steal it. The Crestwood HOA built an illegal road, burned my barn, and sued me for standing my ground. We beat them. Now the federal government wants to finish what they started." I held up the letter. "They call this a buyout. I call it extortion." The crowd roared. I pointed to the barn. "That's where my father taught me to work hard and do right. This land isn't just mine, it's every family's legacy, every American's right. If they can take Hollow Creek, they can take your home, your farm, your future. But we're saying no. Not today, not ever." Senator Gaines took the stage, announcing her bill had passed the Texas Senate. "The Landowner Protection Act will stop HOAs and federal agencies from bullying folks like Tom Harlan," she said. "And we're pushing for a national version." The cheers were deafening. By nightfall, Protect Hollow Creek was trending worldwide, with 250,000 petition signatures and counting. Donations to the Conservancy hit $200,000, enough to cover legal fees and rebuild the barn. But the feds weren't swayed by hashtags. 2 days later, a Land Bureau official, Miss Karen Wells, arrived at the ranch with a briefcase and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Harlan," she said, "we're prepared to offer $2.5 million for your property, plus relocation costs. This is a one-time deal." Clara crossed her arms. "You're on private land. Leave." Wells didn't flinch. "Project 19B is a national priority. We'd prefer to avoid legal escalation." I stepped closer. "You mean eminent domain? Try it. I've got a lawyer, a senator, and half the country watching. You'll lose." Wells left without another word, but her parting glance told me this wasn't over. That night, Clara and I sat down with Susan and Mike Torres, our PI. Mike had new dirt. The Land Bureau's regional director had ties to Victor Slade's old firm. "They're not just after infrastructure," Mike said. "This corridor's a front for private development deals. Your ranch is the last piece." The next morning, the Conservancy papers came through. Hollow Creek Ranch was officially a nonprofit trust, protected forever. No sale, no seizure, no bulldozers. We celebrated quietly, just Clara and me, with coffee on the porch as Daisy grazed nearby. But the feds made one last play. A week later, a new letter arrived, this time threatening a federal review of our Conservancy status. It was a bluff, Susan said, meant to scare us into negotiating. I was done playing games. I called every ally we had: Senator Gaines, the Alliance, the media. We organized a final stand, a rally at the county courthouse. Over 500 people showed up, packing the steps with signs: "Save our land, stop the feds." I spoke first, then handed the mic to Clara, who'd been the brains behind every move. "This isn't just about us," she said. "It's about every family fighting for what's theirs. We won because we stood together. Don't let them divide us." The rally made national news. Under pressure, the Land Bureau issued a statement. Project 19B will proceed without impacting Hollow Creek Ranch Conservancy. It was over. Victor Slade was indicted for fraud, his empire in ruins. Ellen Carter pleaded guilty to embezzlement. Leonard Price took a plea deal, naming every player in the scheme. The Landowner Protection Act passed both houses, signed into law by the governor. HOAs across Texas faced audits, and rural landowners gained new protections. Clara and I rebuilt the barn, stronger than before. The Conservancy hosted its first event, a veteran therapy program with rescued horses. Kids from the local school came to learn about ranching, just like always. One evening, as the sun set over Hollow Creek, Clara and I sat on the porch, her hand in mine. "We did it," she said softly. I nodded. "We didn't just save the ranch. We gave people hope. The fight had cost us sleepless nights, a burned barn, too many legal bills. But it gave us something greater, a legacy that no one could touch. Hollow Creek wasn't just dirt. It was home, and it was ours forever. Looking back, I think about the violence and injustice we faced, the HOA's lies, the fire that took my barn, the drone that watched us in the night. It wasn't just about land. It was about power, greed, and who gets to decide what's right. Clara and I fought because we had to, but we won because we weren't alone. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share your thoughts. Have you faced bullies like the HOA or overreach from those in power? What would you have done in our shoes? Should we have fought harder, or was there a better way? Let's talk about violence and injustice in our world. Where do you stand? Your voice matters. Speak up, because together, we're unstoppable.